Hi, everyone. Good evening. This is Seek Sustainable Japan. I'm JJWalsh here in Hiroshima, joined by the amazing Azby Brown. Thank you so much for joining, Azby.
It's great to be here as always. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed hearing your talk at the Minka Con
Hmm.
at the beginning of this month. And you talked about beautiful handmade things and that connection between handmade things and beautiful houses, traditional houses. We're going to be talking about that. And it really left me thinking so much
Hmm.
about how we have this drive. Everybody's talking about AI and robots and chat GDP, but it makes us feel empty and cold and disconnected, right? So everything you
Hmm.
were talking about, and we're going to talk about today, makes us feel alive.
I like the way you put that. Yes, I agree. So,
So
yeah.
let's get started. So you gave the first example was about cutting an apple.
Ah, yeah. Uh, this sort of came to me at one point. An apple, if you're cutting an apple, peeling an apple, which a lot of people don't do that with a knife anymore. But if you do, what is going on? What are you sensing and feeling, experiencing when you do this simple act of peeling an apple with a knife, say? I mean, your hands are just full of all sorts of sensory, receptors, and so of course you feel like the weight of the apple in your hand, and you may feel that it's cool. It's out of the refrigerator. It's a bit chilled. It's cool, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's a bit. There's moisture on it. It's a little bit wet. You might have washed it. You're feeling that, and then you have this knife, and you're managing to like rotate the apple while you're pulling the knife, and so maybe the knife is going to slip against the peel a bit until you get it to bite in. And then when it bites into the apple, you feel this kind of resistance from the flesh of the apple. It's a kind of a texture that is transmitted to your hand through the knife itself, and even amplified in a way through the knife. And you can do this, and you're rotating it, and you're looking at it every now and then, but you can basically do all of this while you're talking to somebody, which is kind of amazing. How is it that your hands can sort of almost half automatically do so many fine motor tasks? And what does this mean about us as human beings? And particularly as we get further and further away from having these everyday tasks that we're doing with our hands. Instead, we're like using your fingers or your thumbs or something on your phone instead. What does it mean for us in terms of our actual cognition, our sense of self, our understanding of the world? And I kind of have felt for a long time, a decade at least, that we're approaching, or we're actually in a kind of crisis about people not being able to use their hands in a fundamentally human way anymore. So this is a big issue. And I had a laboratory when I was at Kanazawa Institute of Technology. The laboratory was in Tokyo, called the Future Design Institute. And one of the things we focused on was understanding hand and cognition. And of course, I sort of emerged from my youth with a total bias towards hand-related things. I love making things. It seemed clear to me. It should be clear to everybody that using your hands and knowing how to become skilled with your hands is essential, no matter what it is you're doing. And was surprised later, especially when I became an educator, uh, at the resistance to this idea, saying, oh, but if we can do it faster, whatever way is faster is going to be the better way, and disagreeing with that. So we, at our laboratory, we did like 5 years of intensive collaborative research with a neuroscientists and cognitive psychologists, trying to understand how it is we understand things with our hands. And as an example, if I have my key ring is in my trouser pocket here, and I can feel my key ring and know, okay, this is the front door key, and this is the storage locker key. And how on earth do we know that? How do our hands tell us that? You know, is it like your hands are making a picture in your mind in some way, uh, but which even doesn't become a visualization, so it's amazing the things we understand with our hands. So we did a lot of, even going into the MRI, having people in the MRI machine while they're doing hand tasks, trying to understand what parts of their brain light up when they do various things with their hands. So it was a really interesting thing, especially for a person like me with this design and art background to get involved in. But it convinced me that this stuff is essential, and that we lose the ability to use our hands at our great peril, both as individuals and as a society.
It's so interesting. And then if you think about like cutting an apple, we talked about, but
Yeah,
also you have this image of a woman weaving,
yeah,
or you gave this example of this high school student who
yeah,
was so good at making the really fine detail
yeah,
designs
yeah,
at the temple,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And you know, people can, of course, like everything in human, life. Many of us are born with, let's say, innate tendencies or innate characteristics that might make it easier for some of us to learn one thing or learn another, or more difficult to master one skill or master another. But so many things can be mastered, especially regarding the hands. They can be, you can learn, and you can become better at how you use your hands. And yeah, the example of that young boy who was becoming a temple carpenter in Nara at Yakushiji, studying, actually being trained by Master Nishioka. The master just sort of took a look at him and said, yeah, he's got these long, delicate fingers. He's not a burly guy. He's not going to be hefting big beams around, but he's probably going to be good at detailed work. And he gave him the chance. And even though this boy was 16 years old, he was doing these exquisite carvings, the very, very highlight, kind of a focal point of the temple itself. And so he had that tendency, but he also required some training too. And how do you train people to do this stuff? And the previous picture of the woman, she is weaving. Behind her, first of all, to set the time, this is Japan around 1950 something, in the 50s, after the war. I'm pretty sure it's in a rural area. The way there's a house or a building being built, you can see it behind her with the wall framework being made, and is a very, very traditional way. And I'm not sure what exactly she's making, but she is looks like it's a kind of a mat, a woven mat made out of straw. And the one thing that struck me about the photo is that, gee, what she's doing is basically the same as our ancestors were doing thousands of years ago, even in the prehistoric period. This is basically prehistoric Neolithic technology, taking organic things, sticks or twigs or something, and making rope and doing that. So this is a very, very ancient thing that people were doing. And also this notion of weaving really struck me, that, yeah, weaving is a fundamental human technique for dealing with things, for making things, for shaping the environment, for shaping the things that we're using, for transforming raw material of whatever type into something usable and probably beautiful. So that really stuck me. Yes, and then this is a beautiful artwork by an American artist named Sheila Hicks, who emerged in the 60s. She was well trained. She went to Yale Art School. She was trained by Joseph Albers. She was really trained in this very intellectual, abstract context, and basically said, hey, I want to do weaving. And she spent time in South America learning about like Peruvian, Indian, pre-Columbian weaving, and the quipu, which are these strings, knotted strings, which those cultures used to record information. And this became her life's work. And I looked at that and thought, yeah, weaving is somehow really essential. And I'm not a weaver, I may have tried a little bit, but as a notion of how we can shape our environment, all of the rhythms, the textures, the interrelationships between the things, the fact that these woven things can be planar, they can be flat planes, or they can be three-dimensional. All of these things are really remarkable. And again, this is a Japanese basket weaver in the late Meiji period, early 20th century. Basket weaving. This is again bamboo, and even in the Edo period, this is actually Meiji, but even in the Edo period, sometimes there would be fairly large factories doing it, although it was also something people would do at home. Almost anyone could learn how to do this, and in Japan in the Edo period, in the pre-modern period, especially in the rural areas, there was always a big work area inside the house, and in the winter months they would do things like making their sandals, or weaving floor mats, or weaving or making raincoats, or the hats they will need, or things like basket work and other things. It was a very common skill. And of course, if someone was really, really good at it, I mean, like everything, someone in the town is going to be better at that than other people. And people ask them to do it. They will come to them to buy it, and that becomes kind of their business. But weaving, basket weaving, I don't know, a lot of us did it in school or that kind of thing. It's kind of a joke, like you majored in basket weaving, but baskets can be exquisite and also connect us to these very, very earlier times, these earlier ways of perceiving and interacting with the world.
Absolutely. I just went to Takehara, a
Uh-huh.
small sake salt town in Hiroshima,
Uh-huh.
and famous for bamboo, as in the
Really?
name,
Hmm.
Takehara.
Hmm.
And they're always doing beautiful bamboo weaving.
Yeah.
They have a workshop where they have the elderly and
Hmm.
invite tourists in
Hmm.
to come see what they're doing. And
Hmm.
they make this exquisite, like beautiful handbags and things. But this time when I went this week, I saw that they have coffee filters, that they're making bamboo coffee filters
Really?
that they're weaving. And I thought, how beautiful
How
and
do they
what a
do that?
unique idea. Yeah.
How thick are like the bamboo pieces? I mean, are they like
So they're
just the
not super
fibers,
small.
or
So
it's
you
like
would put maybe a paper filter on top, and then it would
ah,
filter
so
the
it's like
coffee
the
through.
little cage or the holder for when you could
Yeah.
plop that on top of your cup
But
and then pour
yeah,
the hot water. That sounds really beautiful.
I
And
know,
again, a
beautiful
wonderful
and
like innovation.
innovative, right?
This prehistoric, Neanderthal, not Neanderthal, but anyway, Neolithic technology used for like coffee.
Yeah,
What a great
so
thing.
you're, like, bringing it into modern relevance. I
Yeah.
love it.
And I can also imagine that as you use it, it gets stained with coffee, which would go
Which
beautifully
I
with
would
the color of
like.
the bamboo,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
That's great,
naturally
great
dyed with
thing.
coffee.
And of course, bamboo is such a fabulous material.
Ah,
If none of your guests have spoken about bamboo in the past, you can probably find a bamboo person, because it is just so versatile.
it's
And in Asian
amazing.
culture, East Asian cultures, well, also Southeast Asian, it's just ubiquitous and used for everything
It's
because
so
it's so
regenerative. It
strong
grows so
and
fast. Yeah,
flexible and certainly totally renewable. It grows so fast, and it can be used in big pieces. You can make pipes out of it. You can make buildings out of it, or you
so
can make
beautiful.
beautiful, delicate, decorative items with it.
Yeah.
So bamboo is a great material.
Is this bamboo
No,
your
no, no. This is wood.
Kumiko example?
This is Kumiko. This is again, we see these things on shoji screens or in Ramma. They're decorative, items made, and as kind of a contrast to some of the other things, like in the world of like Minka and building farmhouses and things, with you're dealing with these massive, heavy things and very robust, connections and big, large mortises and tenons and things like this wonderful column, and this is the opposite end, right? These very delicate structures, which, again, there's a wonderful long tradition in Japan of this, and they can be very complex in this ornamental way. So our hands are capable of this wide range of action. A wonderful a mentor of mine is named Frank Wilson, and he wrote a great book called The Hand. And something like the subtitle was how it affected evolution, culture, and other things. And he uses examples like he would talk to a rock climber. And when you think about what a rock climber is doing with their hands, the weight of their entire body is hanging on their fingers, right? And it's it's incredibly, they're holding incredible weight and a lot of stress, but the same hands can be like doing this very, very delicate stuff, this incredible range of activity that our hands allow us to do. And we certainly see that in the arts of building everywhere, from again, from hewing and shaping large pieces of wood, logs, to making fine carved details, or little parts of the house that require very, very delicate motor skills.
I love this example
Yeah,
that you gave when
yeah.
you can just
Do
see it
you
so
did you
beautifully.
know did you know the potter Kawai Kanjiro?
I didn't, but I was just charmed by this.
Fascinating person. He was really one of the founders of the Mingei movement, and I mean, Yanagi Soetsu, who wrote the wonderful book *The Unknown Craftsman*, is really the founder of it. But he was in that circle, so it's really turn of the century, early 20th century, and these people. After several decades of Japan in its initial push to modernize and to be able to stave off attempts, from Western powers to kind of control things, they just chucked out traditional arts and techniques, wholesale. They just got rid of them. Literally, our Western museums are full of traditional Japanese artwork, sculptures, byobu, bamboo, but prints and other things that were literally taken out of the trash by like museum curators who came to Japan. But the Mingei movement was focused on helping people understand that traditional craft techniques and aesthetics and perception was not at odds with modernism and progressive aesthetics either. So this is both a very traditional thing, but something that would not have been made probably in the 16th century or the 17th century. But what I love about it is you look at it and you see waves. It's a splashing water, right? It is really evoking water, and I know that's intentional. That has to do with how he did this beautiful glaze, these blues and these greens and the white highlights on the parts that are at the highest relief. But also you can see how he moved his fingers. You can see he had this thing in front of him and he just swiped it on one side with his fingers and then swiped it on the other side with his fingers. And you can see that, right? So it's a record of the energy that his hand was producing while he was doing that and interacting with the clay, how hard he was pressing. And you can imagine the clay, being a bit soft and then sort of, bulging up, between his fingers. So it's a beautiful thing. It is, and wonderful art is almost always more than one thing at once, which is why it's wonderful. And I just see this as that. And I love to show this to my students, etc. And so that to me is one, it leads to one aspect of why doing things by hand is important, because so many things that we make by hand embody or capture these records of our interaction with that material through our hands. And we can read that. Yeah, this is, wonderful. I think this is John Stollenmeyer's photo, planing the wood. Planing the wood may be a bit of a different example, because here the goal is to make it perfect. And of course, there is this interaction and this rhythm when you see this work being done, but it's not leaving a record of the hand like it is in that clay of that vase by Kawai Kanjiro. But so many of the things that we prize because they do that, and they tend to be imperfect. They tend to be somehow irregular. If that's the artistic intention. This is beautiful. This is Takishita-san with one of his shiguchi, which is a joint, a big piece of a beam with a joint, and I think he has made a little museum in Kamakura to display pieces of beams and things from Japanese minka that struck him as very sculptural. But this one you can sort of see they carefully flattened the side where the mortise goes, and the rest is sort of more roughly hewn, and you can see the strokes, and you can imagine the carpenter sort of, hitting it with the chisel, or maybe with a chona, there's Japanese adze. You can see this. It leaves a rhythm on the surface, and you can kind of detect, like how hard this was to do. The wood is, this is, I think it must be matsu. So, you can sort of see it's a kind of pine, and you can sort of see the amount of effort that went into that. And it's leaving a record of this. And it's been this way for hundreds of years. It's come down to us from the past hundreds of years. So these things, really, it's people leaving a record of their existence, which to me is, again, a wonderful thing. And so as part of our research into perception of hand at the Future Design Institute, we thought about, what goes on in our brain when we see these things. And there is, neuroscientists have discovered there's something called mirror neurons. And this picture, you can keep it up for a minute. So our brain, many of us know, different parts of your brain are processing different kinds of things on our behalf. So like your visual cortex, the vision is in the back of your head, which is ironic because your eyes are in the front of your head. Other things, language, reading, abstract things, speech, they're in different parts. But right in the middle is something called the somatosensory cortex, which basically is everything relating to your sense of touch. So if you put someone into, an MRI scan, and look at which parts of their brain are being activated when they're touching something, it's that somatosensory cortex. Other parts as well, as they're understanding what it might be, etc. But these things sort of light up, and it's wonderful. This is fantastic technology. It's sometimes relied on too much, but it sort of shows you which part of your brain is involved in which sort of actions you do. But you have to be inside this gigantic scanning machine to do it. Mirror neurons. These are basically in the same location, and they light up when you see somebody doing something. So if you see somebody picking up something with their hands or doing something with their hands, then the part of your brain that controls your own hands or is dealing with your sense reception from your own hands, the same area lights up. It's crazy. Now, again, this is ongoing research. It's been clearly demonstrated in other primates, and the assumption is that humans have it too, but they haven't quite found it. But it's an amazing thing. So this is how we learn, really. If I, see you, reach into the bookcase, and I can't see the bookcase or the books, but I can see, something. I can tell, oh, she's lifting up a heavy book. I can tell that because my brain is reading your physical motion and reaction to this stuff, and then I'm feeling that in a way, sort of modeling that in my own brain as I see you do it. And this is how, when babies, everyone knows you smile at a baby and the baby will smile, that's what's going on. So this is essential for learning. It's absolutely essential for learning. And when I look at something like that Kawai Kanjuro vase, I'm thinking, maybe that's what's going on here too. That in a way, we're reading this record of Kawai Kanjuro's fingers being dragged through the clay. And we sort of feel this. We kind of play this back in our mind when we see this. And it's a wonderful interaction with a person who's not there anymore. So this stuff is really key. And in normal life, day to day, for most of human history, this has been happening constantly, day to day, no matter what we're doing. We see the teacher write on the blackboard, or you see your mother kneading the dough to bake a pie, or even you're learning how to do sports. You're seeing someone swing the bat. We're learning this stuff constantly, and our society in general, thanks to or due to our technology, is becoming increasingly visual. That so much of our learning is really through the visual sense. And if we're, writing something, it's going to be on our phone or on a keyboard. without that engagement, full engagement of your hands and your motor skills. So I've worried about this for a long time as an educator.
There is that disconnect. Like I was listening to a great podcast with
Mm.
Patty Smith, and
Mhm.
she came this year to Hiroshima. So
Yeah,
I've and
you saw
she
her.
did this. Yeah, I saw her,
Mhm.
and she did this great talk event with one of our survivors, A-bomb
Mhm.
survivors here, Keiko Ogura.
Mhm.
And so listening to this podcast and hearing her talk about how physically she has to write things down every day,
That makes sense.
and having that connection to touch
Yes.
for her thoughts,
Yes.
right? And then realizing that so many of us modern people have lost that sense of touch
Yes.
with our thoughts, with our creativity,
Yeah.
right? And how losing that connection to touch and to real things and to beauty, like you're talking about so much,
Mhm.
it's losing part of our soul, isn't it?
I do think it is, and certainly hampering our ability to understand each other. Uh, so yeah, I use my computer, my phone to make notes occasionally, right? I mean, if I'm writing, I'm writing almost always writing on the computer. But on my day to day, I swear by little pieces of paper. My desk is strewn with them, and if it's real important, I will write it more with more strength, and it's done. I will scratch it out, and there's a lot being communicated to me physically. In other words, a kind of a physical embodiment of my thinking about that thing. And um, I've been to an exhibition. There was an exhibition in Tokyo that included Patti Smith's poetry in her original writing, which was great to see. Again, you see the thought process, things scratched out or things smudged or things written larger. And all of this is communicated in that. And of course, almost none of us write letters by hand anymore, right? Maybe we send Christmas cards, if that. But this used to be the way we communicated. And, I'm thinking of, not just Western culture with our ways of writing, but Eastern culture based on the brush, how massively expressive that is. And even if you can't like even read Japanese necessarily, and especially old writing is harder and harder for people to read these days, you get something from just looking at the characters as an image in terms of the personality of this person. Oh, this is a very careful person. Oh, this person is energetic. This person was in a hurry, etc. So this stuff communicates a lot of fundamental human things. And I just want to stress that humans are social animals. We depend on interaction with people literally in order to think, in order to understand, in order to shape our emotions and shape our feelings. We're super, super sensitive to other people's emotional responses, even to things like, you know, um, people's like the color of people's faces depending on their emotional state. Like if they get angry, they turn red. Like our eyes are really sensitive to that. Actually, they're tuned basically for that hemoglobin under the skin color, or for if you're sick and you're getting pale or something, we are really sensitive to that. And we are looking for these social cues constantly, subconsciously. And again, it may be difficult to accept this kind of thing. I'm saying this, but it's like, how can this be true? How can you prove it? But so much of biological neuroscience and other research is really, really pointing to this. So it's like
Oh,
if
interesting.
you have
Yeah.
old people getting together, you have these people in their 90s or whatever, and like sisters. There was the famous Japanese sisters, I forget their names, Kinchan and some,
Oh, yeah.
and they would talk, but the conversation would go from one to the other, and they were remembering for each other, basically, literally. You know,
We need
this
each other.
happened then. No, that
Yeah,
was then, and this was then. Oh, yeah, that's right. But
that's
so
right.
we are sharing our memories, literally,
Yeah,
and we are also sharing our memories through the things we make. So what happens if
absolutely.
we're making things that nobody really cared about? You
Mhm.
know, we hope that people care about it, but we're surrounded by things that nobody really cared about.
That's a good point. You're talking about how we learn visually as well,
Yeah,
not only through touch.
yeah.
And now, after many years of hearing the Minka masters like you and learning so much about how all these beautiful old houses have so
Mm.
many beautiful, intricate parts which are
Mhm,
handmade,
mhm,
now, after all this thinking about it for years, when I see a room like this,
mhm.
it's exciting,
Yeah.
and I feel connected and
Mhm,
warm,
mhm.
and that has a real emotional
Yeah,
connection to many
yeah.
of us, right?
And we're looking at the photo, which is a little bit different from actually being there. But, if you go into this room, I mean, one thing that, again, my mind is replaying is the smell of the tatami, and maybe there's a little bit of dust or the smell from coming in from outside. I love this photograph, and it's a very famous chashitsu in Kyoto. And literally, I was talking about weaving. Every surface, basically, in this tea house is woven, right? From the tatami mats to the ceiling to the wall structure to the windows to all these things are all woven, and the space itself feels like it's woven together. Also, whether it's the beams or the smaller things, the bamboo in the walls and stuff. So, oh yeah, I love this kind of thing. Stajimado, it's kind of an interesting cultural, let's say, development or cultural artifact of revealing the inner structure of the wall through in the form of a window, as if it's a poor farmer's house, and they didn't have enough time or money to actually make a window, but the clay fell off, so they left it because it was bringing in more light. It's kind of a fantasy in a way, but it's beautiful if you look at this, and the way it's wrapped very carefully with the vines, etc. It's just a beautiful, beautiful thing, and a wonderful rhythm. You'll see, like, the horizontals at the top. There's four of them in a line, and then one, then two of them in a line, and then three. This sort of mathematical thing going on, and our hands are perfectly suited to doing this kind of thing, almost subconsciously. Like, you can pick up these little sticks and know if you have one in your hand or two or three or four, simply by touching them. It's kind of a wonderful thing. Yeah.
And then showing those rooms with tatami,
Yeah.
and then even looking in more detail
Yeah.
at how beautiful
Tatami are,
tatami
well,
is.
tatami are great, right? And of course, time and technology goes on, and I think most people who have tatami in their homes now, they have styrofoam for insulation in the middle. But initially, they were really stacks, layers and layers of straw covered with the cover. Which is really made of grass, and the weaving, this outer cover, is very finely woven. And of course, there's different grades of quality, etc., depending on, of course, the cost and the time. And the more carefully woven ones, of course, they're going to be more expensive. And it goes down to the edging as well, everything else, the quality of the cloth on the edging. And I was talking with Miyoko Dime, who is now the executive director for Japan for the World Monuments Fund, which I'm now an advisor for. And she was saying she learned that of the highest grade of tatami, like used in the imperial villas and things, there's like only one person who still knows how to do it. And this is the case with so many things, that these skills are evaporating in our lifetime. And I understood that when I was learning at Yakushiji from Master Nishioka. It was clear that, yeah, we can't. How can we train carpenters to do this work if no one is asking them to do that work? And we see this in the case of carpentry, like temple carpentry. It's nice that there's this sort of boom in minka restoration and moving them and things going on, because more people are getting the experience. It's great that more and more people are learning how to thatch in Japan, to do the kayabuki. That's great. But again, it's this race against time. And it's the case with almost every traditional craft. Some things like pottery, maybe ceramics, because they're a usable thing, you can justify buying it because you're going to use it to eat from or drink from. And there may be other things as well that maybe have a bit more life and support within society, but so many of these crafts are disappearing. So how do we train people to do this now, when it's hard for them to find the opportunity? And I think it comes down to how the question is, how can we restore people's understanding of why it's important, their understanding of what it is they're actually touching and using. And an example is in my classes in Kanazawa, my architecture classes, I would give an assignment early on to the students to go and find things that are made of 10 different materials and list them up and what they are. And maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, but they would, bring like a plastic, chawan, and say it was lacquer, like not knowing the difference between plastic and lacquer. Or they point to the table, the conference table in the room, and say, this is wood. And I'd say, no, that's formica. That's wood grain formica. Can't you tell? Or saying, my shoes are leather. And I'm saying, check again and tell me if they're not vinyl. People don't know what things are anymore. And of course, because we have many new materials, and that's one reason why. And of course, new materials can be fabulous. There's lots of use for them, but people often, they just don't understand this. And maybe I was fortunate that my mother, even though we were not well off at all, she was an artist, and she liked to have beautiful things in the house, small things that also had some story to tell. And that meant wooden furniture or nice ceramics or little objects and things. And we just grew up in learning about that. And part of it was learning about how to take care of them, right? So now we have a lot of people who don't know. So I think our big challenge now is to kind of improve or increase education for people when they're very, very young about real things, about things that are well made out of wood, about things that are well made out of clay, that could be well made out of metal or any other material, to understand the fabrics that we're wearing, to understand, all of the implements in our kitchen, what they're made of, and why they're useful and beautiful and durable. So yeah, I mean, we focus on the big project, like, restoring a minka or some building or a temple. But of course, the people who are doing this, generally, we have sort of self-selected, because we understand this already. No one has to tell us. But it requires a much greater degree of support in society, from government, from other institutions. And we have to be able to persuade those people. And for me, this has been a lot of my work for years, decades, has been to try to be a person who can make those arguments and explain why these things are important. So anyway, I think it's got to start with childhood, and have kids making things and learning about stuff, so that they will grow up into adults who think it's worth using their tax money to support, restoring a village. Yeah.
And these could be life skills, right? Like, how shouldn't we teach kids how to grow vegetables?
Growing
Shouldn't
vegetables
we
is a
teach
wonderful
kids
example.
how to cook for themselves? Well, shouldn't we also teach them how to do this beautiful bamboo lattice that goes into a building, right?
Why not? Teach them how to.
Why not natural plaster?
Kids can, as and Emily Reynolds has shown this, kids can do plastering. It's a great thing
They're
to
very
have
good at
adults
it.
and kids doing together. Clay plaster, kids can do that.
And it's natural. It's non-toxic.
And it's natural. And they can learn thatching. They can learn a lot of things. Kids learn a lot. And some educational systems do focus on that, especially in the early years. But as it goes on, and we get more, the education is focusing more on output, of whether it's mathematics or science or some kind of, text, there's less and less of that actual focus on the hand unless they're doing arts or maybe athletics in a different way or some other thing. So
Wouldn't this kayabuki
yeah,
be a great school project?
it would be. I mean, in the Edo period, and I talk about this in my book just enough. It was something that all ages could participate in. There was something for everybody, some way for everybody to help. Like the little kids could be scrambling up to bring rope to the adult workers. They could be picking up the odds and ends in the trash and carting that off. They would be, going back and forth all around the building site, watching and learning. And they get to a certain age, then they're allowed. You can try tying this thing on, and they could try that. Maybe they're 10 years old when that's happening. Maybe they're 12 years old, or maybe even younger. So kids are very, very competent, or can be very, very competent. And we're seeing throughout, and this is a global phenomenon, just this de-skilling. I mean, this is actually de-skilling and non-skilling. These are two terms that I find myself using a lot lately, and read an interesting research paper that was relating to medical, actually people who are doing medical scans and learning to read these scans. Well, AI systems have proven to be very helpful for helping doctors find like little tumors and stuff. They can go through thousands. They build a library, they train on thousands of scans where they know this one has a tumor, that's not a tumor, and then they can look at a scan and quickly, or go through a lot and say, oh, this is likely a tumor, and then the doctor can look and say, yeah, that's a tumor. So this is very helpful in a lot of ways, but what happens is that the doctors become less skilled to do this without the help of the AI. And so this is de-skilling. And depending on when in their education, their training as a doctor, they started to use these systems, there's like a clear graph of this. If they were using these systems from the beginning of medical school, they never developed a skill. This is non-skilling. Others who started midway, they started on their own, and then these systems came in, then they become de-skilled. I think this is, again, almost everything in our society now. As we are these things, ChatGPT, these other LLMs that are helping people write. And my response is, why do you want to let a machine put words in your mouth? And students are using them constantly, and there's a lot of debate in education about, well, how do we relate with this? And I had a course even 3 years ago. I told my students, I gave them an assignment to intentionally use ChatGPT to write some texts, and then they had to fact check them. And so they had to learn why. But throughout, we're really at this point where people are not developing what used to be fundamental skills. And you can say, oh, yeah, well, they said the same thing about the calculator. Back when I was in high school and college, they were just finally becoming affordable. You'll never be able to do long division. Well, I think you should learn how to do long division. Right? It's about the thought process. It's about what happens inside. You should write on your own because it's about what's happening inside you. It's this internal experience. And I have had lots of conversations with friends, very accomplished people in different fields, technology, science people who say, oh, I really like using the ChatGPT to generate ideas and stuff. And I can say, okay, maybe there is a valid use case, but in society-wide, people are just now unable to read or write. And what does that mean for our society? So it goes far beyond, carving wood or making pots. This is a whole aspect where we need to maintain a conscious effort society-wide to make sure that people, when they're young, develop basic skills. And the thing about arts is, because of the beauty of the result, it's an incredible motivator. The beauty of the house, the beauty of that object, that pot, that basket, whatever it is, it's an incredible motivation to create something of beauty that you can enjoy, that other people can enjoy. So I hope that we can, find ways to, help society and educators and government people understand why this is important.
I think so. Absolutely.
Mm.
And, anyone who looks at this, we're looking at a Sudade
Yes.
shoji,
Yeah. This is in
and
Kanazawa. Yeah. Yeah.
it's so beautiful
Yeah.
and so obviously handmade.
Yeah.
And you can just see how it would have taken a long time.
Mm.
But it brings you so much comfort
Yeah.
and happiness
Yeah.
just being near it, doesn't it?
And it ties in with so many other things. I mean, these are only used in the summer. Their shoji generally in the house would be covered with washi paper, which is white and they're translucent, and they help keep out wind and stuff. But in the summer, you want the breeze to come through, so that's why the sudari, of course, is the reed blinds which you would hang down in front of the window or on the veranda. But this is the same kind of structure, but actually as a shoji, which slides back and forth. So they shape the light. They make a beautiful texture. They also, they just lend this translucency to the space. There's a layer and then there's a layer behind us. It's not totally visible. It's a wonderful thing. And that one is a particularly elegant example. It's actually at a chaya, tea house, geisha house in Kanazawa in the eastern Chaya district. And if you notice the carving, the wooden board at the bottom, just beautifully carved with this, pierced work, sort of the little designs sewn out. So it's very, very elegant, but also very rustic. I mean, it is, after all, reeds, which are kind of irregular and, kind of countrified in a way. So this is something I love about Japanese culture, that transforms these very rustic things into incredibly sophisticated works of art.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And then you have these gorgeous examples of the amazing curved beams.
Yeah. Yeah. So this, again, back to the weaving. The first time, when I was looking at books before I came to Japan in the 80s, and then came and was able to spend time with a carpenter in Kyoto who was doing this kind of work. And it was just amazing to watch, because if you see this beam sort of snaking from right to left in the middle, you see it's underneath those two other beams, and it's on top of the other one. It's woven. It's a woven structure above, under, over, over. And they had to visualize this, right? And I remember watching the carpenter do this, literally, they set up like a tripod of poles and were suspending the beams and sort of seeing, how can we get these curvy things to fit together? And it meant that they were also visualizing it in their mind at the same time, and figured, oh, they will connect here. They will touch here, and that's where we want it. We can make the joint there, and we can make that joint there. But it's this wonderful woven structure. Now, a lot of Japanese buildings, including farmhouses and others, it's a bit simpler and a bit more, top down, very simple. But the use of these naturally curved logs lends themselves to this kind of woven structure. And then, of course, the roof here, this is a gasho zukuri, so like the kind of farmhouse or the very, very steeply pitched roof in Gifu Prefecture, like in Shirakawa, which is, national heritage. And the roof structure, the beams, etc., would be done by the carpenters. And often they were itinerant. They would go from town to town. But the rest of the structure you see above that is lashed, wooden poles and bamboo lashed together with rope. Again, a very ancient, Neolithic technology, prehistoric technology that's still used and is still beautiful, because it has been elevated from something purely functional to something aesthetically beautiful. And again, this is woven. Again, all of the members are woven together in a way, and then there's a sort of woven structure on top as well.
So beautiful. I love seeing above people's ceilings when they buy the old houses,
Yeah.
right? And it's so exciting. What kind of beam structure are we going to see under
Yeah,
there?
what we're gonna
And
see. Yeah,
yeah, and often you don't know until you buy it, right? You
it
can't
could
like
be. Yeah,
peek under
that's
the
also
ceiling
part of it.
earlier.
Yeah, yeah. And I was in a house, actually, I was with a group of students from Indonesia in Fukushima this past weekend for 3 days. And we're Safecast, the NGO that I, work with, doing radiation monitoring and stuff. We've done we often take student groups, and this is the second year we've had students from Indonesia, and we visit a small village in the southern part of Okuma, which is one of the towns most affected by the disaster, where it's a former samurai village, and a friend's family were samurai, and the house is still there, but they evacuated in 2011. Long story short, the house is beautiful, and I'm hoping somehow to be able to participate or encourage its restoration and turned into a cultural item. But when I went in, I should have sent you the photo for this. I've been there many times, and there's the former the former itama, the wooden floor that had the irori in the middle, but now it's covered with tatami, and above are some big heavy beams and then a ceiling. Just like that, I'm thinking, what's above that ceiling? And I'm talking to the family member who is, showing the students, and I really would like to see what's up there. And he says, me too, I've never seen that. But they put this, there's a ceiling and a floor because they were raising silkworms. So at some point they covered up that beautiful structure in order to have a floor level where they could raise the silkworms. So, but it's great. It's a mystery. We have imagination. We know it's going to be something like this, and I'm just curious exactly what's it going to be like.
Yeah, it'll be exciting when you can see it.
Yeah.
These are other ceilings. So again, we have like the bamboo sudare style, is it?
Sudare, and again, this is again, it's rustic. It's kind of country style, and tea houses, chashitsu, are intentionally made to be kind of like a country hut. The hut of a poor farmer or a poor hermit out in the wilderness, and that is said, of course, the way they're made are perfect and exquisite in every detail. But again, with this language, and the Sudari Tenjo is one, it's made like the Sudari. And literally, there's only, you can see these small, I guess, bamboo poles holding it up, and it's like a Sudare. And and these are often in combination with other things. Sudare, again, being this wooden blind. So it's about the color and the rhythm. And, you can see how it's put together. You can see there are those strings that were used to tie it together, etc. It's kind of a beautiful, beautiful thing, and simple, and can be replaced. This is another one. Kakekomi is kind of like on an angle. Often tea houses have kind of a sloped part of the roof that also is exposed inside the tea house itself. And again, this is several layers of structure. These beautiful poles, strip bark poles, and I think these are Kitayama Sugi. Kitayama Sugi. You've seen this way of growing sugi where they train them. The tree itself is very old, and then straight ones come off of the branches, and they can cut those, and then they'll grow back, and they're really super straight.
Yeah.
And often don't have knots because they're really not branching much. And these are the most prized and expensive kinds of poles to use in things, and tea designers love it. So that's probably what these are. And then a couple of layers of bamboo, again, tied together, lashed together, and then the boards of the thing. So when I see this, I can almost feel the weight of these things and how they tied them. Yeah.
Beautiful.
You can sort of feel all that. And this is just your typical Japanese ceiling called Saobuchi Tenjo. But even that is a wonderful little structure. And these are suspended. Even, hundreds of years ago, they were having these suspended ceilings. So they would be, beautifully jointed, like a little dovetail joint on this long pole that's going up and is then connected to a beam above. And this little dovetail thing is holding that horizontal saobuchi. And then thin boards, often selected in the finer examples, selected for fine grain and color. But basically, even you can't see here, but or maybe you can see the ceiling in my little room here is basically the same. You can find people, every carpenter basically knows how to do this these days.
And then you have it all coming together in a beautiful room.
Yeah. This one is great because it's a renovation, and kind of they modernized it. They made it both contemporary, but it's an older house that was renovated. And this room, actually, it's now a concrete floor to make a doma, in other words, like an earth floor room. But this was actually, there used to be a floor here, which they took out in order to have a bigger room with this space. But here again, the ceiling, the tenjo, is called a go tenjo, which is this grid. And this is a lot more work. It's the same kind of structure as the kakikomi that we saw earlier, with little joints on each one, and they're kind of actually woven together in that way. And then it has to be dressy, has to have nice boards. So this is for a more well-off person or a temple or something like that. They're commonly used, but it's a much dressier way of doing it. Yeah.
Cool. Now, and all of these beautiful ideas, of course, the idea that our minds are activated, our emotions, our connection with each other.
Yeah.
But who is it for?
Mm.
Right? Why should we preserve it? Why should we do it for the
Yeah.
next 1,000-year time span?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. This notion that we should be thinking in terms of 1,000 years, in terms of millennia. This is something that Master Nishioka taught me, years ago when I was here, the first year I was here, and it sort of detonated later in my mind, the significance of this, because the trees that were used for temples like Horyuji or Yakushiji when they're first built, they were 1,000 years old when they were cut. And we know that because when they've restored them and done, they could count the rings and see that. And then the temple is built beautifully and it's lasting for more than 1,000 years. And these things are still speaking to us. For Japanese people, there's a particular resonance, of course, because this is their culture, this is their world, their language. But for humanity in general, this is a very precious thing. And I think we need to think that way. For all of the challenges we have due to short-sightedness, to thinking only a few years ahead or the next quarter for business or some kind of profit margin, it is cutting off the future literally from us. And there's a wonderful book I read called The Good Ancestor by a writer, a philosopher named Roman Karadznik. And we actually have had a conversation going on. And yes, he talks about all of the wonderful things that people in the past have left for us, that they were good ancestors trying to show us the way, to show us what's important, what can be important, what can be beautiful, and how to do it. And that we should strive to be good ancestors. Now, of course, nothing is certain, especially the future. We don't know what's going to happen, but I think it is an important motivation. It should be something that motivates all of us, is to be good ancestors in our little sphere, in our little corner, to try to leave something behind for people who will be born later in the future, 1 generation, 2, 10, for those people later. And this, being able to strive to do that myself is a very powerful motivator, a very powerful way to focus my attention, my work, what I'm doing, to center me, gives me confidence. Who is it for? It's not for us. It's for the people who will come after. And if you value humanity, which maybe not enough people do, I think people would find themselves valuing this as well.
That is such a beautiful thing to end on. I love that so
Thank you.
much. But people talk about wanting to be a better person,
Yeah.
wanting to leave money and secure things for your kids, but preserving culture and preserving these beautiful handcrafted things, doing what you can to even just talk about it,
Yeah.
write the beautiful books like you've done, Azby. You've done so much
Thank you.
to try to make a better future. So I really appreciate all of your hard work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And it's always great to talk to you. And one thing I love the most is that you ask the right questions. So I really appreciate you having me on, and that you have thought about this as much as you have as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Just a shout out to Wendy, who's joined us.
Hi,
Said
Wendy.
so fascinating to hear Azby talking about craft and the brain. Love the enthusiasm. Rob Dyer, love those roof beams. Yes, absolutely.
Great.
Mark Deeker, thanks for the great conversation. I've got Azby's Just Enough and Japanese Dream House on my shelf here in the Kominka, and also really appreciate those books.
Thank you, Mark.
Wonderful.
Yes. So I know some of those people, others I don't know. It's great to have. It's great to have people listening in.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you all
Mm.
so much for joining us live. And thank you once again,
Mhm.
Azby.
My
I
pleasure.
always learn so much, but I'm
Yep.
also always so inspired. So
Really?
thank you.
Well, that's really
Yeah.
gratifying. That's really gratifying because I'm just me, and but it's always gratifying when people have the book or want me to want to talk to me about something that I've been thinking about and want to share. So it's really gratifying. I really appreciate your work a lot, and you've been at this for how many years now? Doing this
Oh,
podcast?
5? About 5? Yeah.
I think we started during the pandemic, right? That
We
first
did.
one.
Yeah.
So that's great, and you're keeping at it, and I think it's really valuable. And these will survive. We have to find a way to make sure these survive for the future. Your podcast.
Yes. Yes. We are documenting time
Uh huh.
and ideas, and we hope that it's useful. That's
Yeah,
all that keeps me going.
that's it. That's a big part of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
documenting.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again,
Thanks.
Azby. Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone. Take
All right.
care.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Just become less skilled to do this without the help of the AI. And so this is de-skilling. And depending on when in their education, their training as a doctor, they started to use these systems, there's like a clear graph of this. If they were using these systems from the beginning of medical school, they never developed the skill. This is non-skilling. Others who started midway, they started on their own, and then these systems came in, then they become de-skilled. I think this is, again, almost everything in our society now. As we are these things, Chat GPT, these other LLMs that are helping people write. And my response is, why do you want to let a machine put words in your mouth? And students are using them constantly, and there's a lot of debate in education about, well, how do we relate with this? What does that mean for our society? So it goes far beyond, carving wood or making pots. This is a whole aspect where we need to maintain a conscious effort society-wide to make sure that people, when they're young, develop basic skills. And the thing about arts is, because of the beauty of the result, it's an incredible motivator. The beauty of the house, the beauty of that object, that pot, that basket, whatever it is, it's an incredible motivation to create something of beauty that you can enjoy, that other people can enjoy. So I hope that we can, find ways to, help society and educators and government people understand why this is important.
I just went to Takehara, a
Uh-huh.
small sake salt town in Hiroshima,
Uh-huh.
and famous for bamboo, as in the
Really?
name,
Hmm.
Takehara.
Hmm.
And they're always doing beautiful bamboo weaving.
Yeah.
They have a workshop where they have the elderly and
Hmm.
invite tourists
Hmm.
in to come see what they're doing. And
Hmm.
they make this exquisite, like beautiful handbags and things. But this time when I went this week, I saw that they have coffee filters, that they're making bamboo coffee filters
Really?
that they're weaving. And I thought, how beautiful
How
and
do they
what a
do that?
unique idea.
People leaving a record of their existence, which to me is, again, a wonderful thing. And so as part of our research into perception of hand at the Future Design Institute, we thought about, what goes on in our brain when we see these things. And there is, neuroscientists have discovered there's something called mirror neuron. Many of us know different parts of your brain are processing different kinds of things on our behalf. So like your visual cortex, the vision is in the back of your head, which is ironic because your eyes are in the front of your head. Other things, language, reading, abstract things, speech, they're in different parts. But right in the middle is something called the somatosensory cortex, which basically is everything relating to your sense of touch. So if you put someone into, an MRI scan and look at which parts of their brain are being activated when they're touching something, it's that somatosensory cortex. other parts as well, as they're understanding what it might be, etc. But these things sort of light up, and it's wonderful. This is fantastic technology. It's sometimes relied on too much, but it sort of shows you which part of your brain is involved in which sort of actions you do. But you have to be inside this gigantic scanning machine to do it. Mirror neurons. These are basically in the same location, and they light up when you see somebody doing something. So if you see somebody picking up something with their hands or doing something with their hands, then the part of your brain that controls your own hands or is dealing with your sense reception from your own hands, the same area lights up. It's crazy. Now, again, this is ongoing research.
So many of us modern people have lost that sense of touch.
Yes.
With our thoughts, with our creativity.
Yeah.
Right. And how losing that connection to touch and to real things and to beauty, like you're talking about so much, it's losing part of our soul, isn't it?
I do think it is. And certainly hampering our ability to understand each other.